Chakra, Maharaj Ambarish, who was not at all inclined to merely watch as Durvasa Muni was killed by its heat. Instead, being the well-wisher of everyone, even his offenders, Maharaj Ambarish had prayed to the chakra for the release of Durvasa Muni from its grip. This saved Durvasa Muni. And our verse is here. Yada Vishishta Swamananjena Navai Balam Pravishto Jita Daitya Danavam Bahudaror Vangri Shirodharani Vishrichan Adrasham Pradhane Virajase Yada Vishishta Swam Ananjanena Vai Balam Pravishto Jitadaitya Danavam Bahudaror Vangri Shirodharani Vrishchan Ajashram Pradhane Virajase. And this verse translates, O indefatigable one, when you are sent by the Supreme Personality of Godhead to enter among the soldiers of the Daityas and Danavas, you stay on the battlefield and unendingly separate their arms, bellies, thighs, legs, and head. And the next verse, 259, O protector of the universe, you are engaged by the Supreme Personality of Godhead as his all-powerful weapon in killing the envious enemies for the benefit of our entire dynasty. Kindly favor this poor Brahmana. This will certainly be a favor for all of us. If our family has given charity to proper persons, if we have performed ritualistic ceremonies and sacrifices, if we have properly carried out our occupational duties, and if we have been guided by learned brahmanas, I wish in exchange that this brahmana be freed from the burning caused by the Sudarshan chakra. 11. If the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is one without a second, who is the reservoir of all transcendental qualities, and who is the life and soul of all living entities, is pleased with us, we wish that this Brahmana, Durvas Muni, be freed from the pain of being burned. Sukadev Goswami continued, when the king offered prayers to the Sudarshan Chakra and Lord Vishnu, because of his prayer, the Sudarshan Chakra became peaceful and stopped burning the Brahmana known as Durvas Muni. 13. Durvas Muni, the greatly powerful mystic, was indeed satisfied when freed from the fire of the Sudarshan Chakra. Thus, he praised the qualities of Maharaj Ambarish and offered him the highest benedictions. Number 14, Durvas Muni said, my dear king, today I have experienced the greatness of the devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For although I have committed an offense, you have prayed for my good fortune. 15. For those who have achieved the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the master of the pure devotees, what is impossible to do and what is impossible to give up? 16. What is impossible for the servants of the Lord? By the very hearing of his holy name, one is purified. 17. O king, overlooking my offenses, you have saved my life, and thus I am very obliged to you because you are so merciful. 18. Expecting the return of Durvas Muni, the king had not taken his food. Therefore, when the sage returned, the king fell at his lotus feet, pleasing him in all respects, and fed him sumptuously. This is 19. Thus the king respectfully received Durvas Muni, who after eating varieties of palatable food was so satisfied that with great affection he requested the king to eat also, saying, "Please take your meal." Now here's the verse that actually has a purport, the last one, 9.5.20. Durvas Muni said, "I am very pleased with you, my dear king. At first I thought of you as an ordinary human being and accepted your hospitality. But later I could understand by my own intelligence that you are the most exalted devotee of the Lord. Therefore, simply by seeing you, touching your feet, talking with you, I have been pleased and have become obliged to you." So here's the purport. It is said, Vaishnavera Kriya Mudra, Vigye na Bhujaya, Vigyeha na Bhujaya. This is from Madhya Lila 23.39. Even a very intelligent man cannot understand the activities of a pure Vaishnava. Therefore, because Durvas Muni was a great mystic yogi, he first mistook Maharaj Mahambarish for an ordinary human being and wanted to punish him. Such is the mistaken observation of a Vaishnava. When Durvas Muni was persecuted by the Sudarshan Chakra, however, his intelligence developed. Therefore, the word Atma Medasa is used to indicate that by his personal experience, he would understand how great a Vaishnava the king was. When Durvas Muni was chased by the Sudarshan Chakra, he wanted to take shelter of Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva. And he was even able to go to the spiritual world, meet the personality of Godhead, and talk with him face to face. Yet he was unable to be rescued from the attack of the Sudarshan Chakra. Thus, he could understand the influence of a Vaishnava by personal experience. Durvasa Muni was certainly a great yogi and a very learned Brahmana. But despite his being a real yogi, he was unable to understand the influence of a Vaishnava. Therefore, it is said, Vaishnavera Kriya Mudra Vigyeha Na Bhujaya. Even the most learned person cannot understand the value of a Vaishnava. Therefore, or rather, there is a possibility for so-called jnanis and yogis to be mistaken when studying the character of Vaishnava. A Vaishnava can be understood by how much he is favored by the Supreme Personality of Godhead in terms of his inconceivable qualities. So I'll reread the Sanskrit of this last verse. Pritosmi angrihitosmi tava bhagavatasya vai darshana sparshanalpire tityainatma medasa. Durvas Muni said, I am very pleased with you, my dear king. At first I thought of you as an ordinary human being and accepted your hospitality. But later I could understand by my own intelligence that you are the most exalted devotee of the Lord. Therefore, simply by seeing you, touching your feet, and talking with you, I have been pleased and have become much obliged to you. Okay, so these are the verses that describe the deliverance of Durvas Muni. He had wanted to curse and punish Ambarish for the small infraction of taking some water only while he had not yet been offered some food himself. Traditionally, in the Vedic system, a person is allowed to eat, the host is allowed to eat only when first the guest is satisfied. And Durvasa Muni had not yet taken his meal that had been prepared by Ambarish and his entourage. So, of course, Durvasa Muni had dallied um, and taken time, and it was time for Ambarish to break his fast for a some period of time that he was fasting. And so he consulted to see whether he should break fast or not. And the Brahmanas assured him that he could drink water, which is considered both breaking a fast and not breaking a fast. So, for the purposes of the fast, to gain the benediction offered by the fast, he took water to break it. And for the benefit of Durvasa Muni to not eat before his guest, he took water, which is also considered in this case not breaking fast. So this should have been not at all a difficult thing for Durvasa Muni to consider, but Durvasa Muni used it as a platform to become angry and sent the Sudarshan, or rather sent a fiery demon to destroy Maharaj Ambarish. But of course, because Maharaj Ambarish was actually a great devotee of the Lord, the Supreme Lord would not stand by and simply watch his devotee be disturbed or destroyed by the anger of Durvasa Muni. So instead, the great fiery demon conjured by Durvasa Muni was killed itself, and then the Sudarshan Chakra went after Durvasa Muni himself. And of course, Durvasa Muni found himself being chased by this Sudarshan Chakra all over the universe. Wherever he would go, the Sudarshan Chakra would be right behind him. And Durvasa was being punished and chased and harassed by this Sudarshan Chakra. But this finally came to a head when he went, after asking Shiva and Brahma to save him, to the personality of Godhead himself in the Vaikuntha worlds. And there, the personality of Godhead informed him that he would not be freed by the personality of Godhead. Rather, he needed to ask for forgiveness from Ambarish, which then Durvasa did, as we see here. He asked forgiveness for having offended Maharaj Ambarish, and Ambarish then, quite appropriate to a devotee and quite uncharacteristic of most people, began to offer prayers to satisfy the Sudarshan Chakra, and therefore the Sudarshan Chakra would release Durvasa Muni. And of course, then this occurred, and Durvasa Muni was fed, and then Durvasa Muni asked Ambarish to please take something. So this is kind of the flow of this section. But the highlight here is, of course, the difference between the devotees and the those who are not devotees. We did this the last time we spoke on this particular topic, because this stretched over some chapters in the ninth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So we learned about how to perform devotional service, mystic yogis and devotees, how they're different, how offenses against devotees are not at all taken lightly by the Supreme Lord, and how material pride leads to all these kinds of issues. The things I'm even more surprised about in this particular chapter that we are reading from of the ninth canto, we're reading the fifth chapter now, um, is that the Sudarshan chakra is actually the creational mechanism of the Supreme Lord, aside from being his weapon, that the Supreme Lord uses the Sudarshan chakra. It's his glance. In several places, I was really amazed to read this today, that in several places, the Supreme Lord um, is described as creating the entire material world from this Sudarshan chakra, in 955. We'll turn there for a minute here. It says the word Sudarshan means auspicious vision. From Vedic instruction, we understand that this material world was created by the glance of the Supreme Personality of God. Saikshata sa ashrijata. So saikshata means to look, or the Supreme Lord looked, and sa ashrijata, he created. So by his glance, we often hear that the material universe is spawned by the glance of the Supreme Lord. And here we find that by this glance, by the looking of the Supreme Lord, everything is asrijata, is created. And this asrijata, or creation, is done through the mechanism, and it's called the Sudarshan. And of course, Su means good, and Darshan means to see. So auspicious vision. So by the auspicious vision of the Supreme Lord, the material universe is created. And of course, the same Sudarshan is the mechanism that caused the burning and fear that Durvas Muni had faced as a result of his offense towards Ambarish. So the important thing about Vaishnavas is that they are not at all motivated towards self-interest, and they are not motivated towards certainly revenge, which might have been a motivation in a situation like this. We see when we read, the Mahabharata and other Vedic literatures, that often revenge is a common motivation. And in this case, revenge did not play a role in Maharaj Ambarish's thinking. He could have just stood by while Durvasa Muni was punished by the Sudarshan chakra, maybe even killed. But instead, uh, he pleaded with the Sudarshan chakra to forgive Ambarish. To forgive Durvasa Muni. So Ambarish is pleading with the Sudarshan chakra for release of Durvasa Muni from this painful burning of the Sudarshan chakra. This is the greatness of the devotees, that they do not wish wrong or harm to anyone, even those who have offended them. That is because the devotees can understand that everyone in the material world is caught in illusion. And if someone is right now an illusion, eventually they will be purified. And they wish for the well-being of such a person so that soon that person will be purified and therefore come back home, back to Godhead, and become a Vaishnava himself, rather than being destroyed by the Sudarshan chakra. Of course, in our material world, everyone is destroyed by the Sudarshan chakra, not just Durvasa Muni. The wheel of time usually is how it works in the material world, that we follow our material desires, and following them, we hope will become happy. But instead, we become destroyed by the wheel of time. So, this is the interesting thing that I forget where it is. I think it's somewhere in the seventh canto with Prahlad Maharaj, where Prahlad says that uh, no, when someone wishes to glorify those who are better than oneself, when one wishes to make friends with those who are equal to oneself, and when one seeks to genuinely help those who are in distress or in an inferior position to oneself, then one is actually very exalted. And we all know that the way that usually people interact is when a person meets someone better than themselves, they try to pull down the person who's better than themselves, and they try to advertise themselves as greater than they actually are. That's the normal way it works. And when you meet someone of equal rank, you tend also to denigrate them and to try to advertise yourself as better among equals. And when you meet somebody who is in an inferior position, you tend to laugh at them and to degrade them further because it makes you feel good. So this is the normal way things work. But Vaishnavas are not known for their normal behavior. And this is why Prabhupada quotes this verse a number of times, this Vaishnavara Kriya Mudra Vigyeha na bhujaya, that no one can understand the mind of a Vaishnava, because the mind of a Vaishnava is being controlled and being focused on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So a Vaishnava is always thinking about the welfare of others. All right. So I wanted to see if there are any questions anyone has, in our group. And that way we can go there. Well, it looks like something already is there in the chat. Let me see if it's a question. Okay. It's just advertising the questions. Anyone have something they wish to uh, question about this particular chapter of Durvas Muni being saved by the very person he offended, by Ambarish?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
That that picture that you showed where Ambarish Maharaj is pleading for Durvasa Muni's case, there are others in the picture also looking on.
Uh-huh.
Do we know who, or does it matter who those other persons are?
I just assume it's, you're talking about this picture, right?
Yeah.
There's the other persons, I assume, are the cooks and the members of Ambarish's court, because Ambarish, of course, is a great king, so he's naturally got ministers and people who are part of his governmental office, and so they also probably are there. It doesn't, this chapter, as far as I know, didn't really mention or describe anything about these other devotees or entities or ministers that were with Ambarish during this section.
Okay, so the person who painted it just made the assumption that
Right.
such people,
Right.
No,
It's a
thank you,
reasonable
Maharaj.
assumption.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Pronounce.
Jai Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much for the wonderful class. I had two questions. I was curious, I apologize, this seems pretty fundamental, but how was Durvasa Muni able to go to Vaikuntha to plead shelter from the Supreme Lord when he himself is not a pure devotee? How was he able to gain access?
You are very sharp. I had that question myself, and I couldn't find a good answer for it. Because generally we think that the Vaikuntha is off limits for anyone who is not a pure devotee. And obviously, by this episode, Durvasa Muni has clearly demonstrated that he's not, a pure devotee. Yet somehow or other, I guess for the sake of the story and for the sake of Durvas learning how he could deliver himself, the Supreme Lord made an exception. That's the only thing I can offer as an explanation. The Supreme Lord had special mercy on Durvasa Muni, and normally he would not have been allowed to come into Vaikuntha. But because the Supreme Lord wanted to tell him how he could save himself, then he allowed him to come in and therefore learn that it was a simple matter, really. All he had to do was ask for forgiveness from Ambarish, and then he would be saved. And so immediately he went and did that, and thus was saved.
Hare Krishna, can I interject something? Because on this point, we learned, I don't remember if it was Bandhu or somebody else who mentioned that, yes, he had gotten to Vaikuntha, but he was kind of like stopped at the gate or something. He didn't actually enter,
Like the four Kumaras, something like that.
Yeah, maybe something like that. The point was being made too that, even if you physically go to a spiritual place, what will you actually experience, if you don't have the right consciousness?
Right.
The idea is that, you can't take a plane to Vrindavan, if you don't go with the proper consciousness, you won't, the place, the holy dham will be covered. So maybe those lines is what I remember hearing.
Rupa Chandra has offered that I heard that Vaikuntha refers to Vaikuntha within the material universe. So maybe that's the deal, that he went to some representation of the spiritual world within the material world, which you can certainly do. Anyone can go to Vrindavan, even though it's technically the spiritual world. You won't experience Vrindavan when you go there, but you can go there physically. So that's, I think, that's another possible answer.
Maharaj, just on that note, I forget this was probably mentioned by one of the other speakers, but they did say that, and I don't know if it's true, but Durvasa Muni had access to the three worlds, or had the ability to travel to the three worlds, and I wasn't sure if that included actually the spiritual world. But with that question, I personally, I guess if you could expound on Rupa Chandra's possibility, where is Vaikuntha in the material world? Is it Vrindavan? Is that what it possibly meant? But also with Miss Gale's example, to even arrive at the gates of Vaikuntha, one has to have reached some level of spiritual realization, as in, say, Brahma Bhuta and have been able to reach, say, the Brahmajyoti minimum, some level of spiritual realization to get out of the material world, because one is not able to leave, is my understanding, until one has, say, even reached not even Brahman realization, but Brahmajyoti liberation. And so the four Kumaras were an example of that. The Gyanis who come to, Krishna, they have reached that kind of, I would say, base level of spiritualization. But my understanding is that Durvasa Muni didn't even, although he was a mystic yogi, he really was not any sort of devotee or have reached that, have say been Brahmajyoti liberation, reach that type of liberation to even travel to the spiritual world. So I don't know. I'm throwing out just kind of questions, if you can perhaps respond or comment on that.
Yeah, as I was saying before, that he could have been on the boundary. The text, at least here, the interesting thing is, these kind of questions come up, and then, a year or two down the road or something, I'll be reading some very obscure literature, and suddenly it'll answer that question. But I have no idea where to start looking for that. The question that definitively answers it. But I could say all those possibilities could be where the answer lies, that Durvasa Muni, because he's a mystic yogi, that means that mystic yogis can travel anywhere in the three worlds. And that generally means, Bhur, Bhuva, and Swar Loka, so he can travel and into the heavenly worlds. And the heavenly worlds, I guess, like the four Kumaras, you can at least go to the doorstep of Vaikuntha there, like they did, because they were actually advanced yogis themselves. They had the ability to travel anywhere, but they were into Brahman realization. So for them, the four Kumaras, they had wanted to learn about the personal feature of the Lord. So that's why they came to the doorstep of Vaikuntha, because they were not at all adverse to the idea that there might be a personal form of the Supreme Lord. And they honestly wanted to learn something about it. And so that's why they were there. Now for Durvasa, I don't know, that why he was, what his concept was, why he was coming close to the, to Vaikuntha, or whether he was simply just traveling to one of the dhams in the material world. It could have been Vrindavan, it could have been, anywhere, Mathura, or it could have been Jagannath Puri or somewhere like that. And there, is where the Supreme Lord met him and informed him of what he needed to do to be saved from the Sudarshan Chakra's burning rays. And Durvasa Muni, to his credit, immediately took up the effective remedy, which is also showing that Durvasa Muni did learn something from this episode, that Durvasa Muni wasn't asleep at the wheel completely, that he became, through his duress, he became, aware now that devotees are not common or ordinary people. Because although, a king is ruling a kingdom, there's nothing too special about that. There have been lots of kings. What is special is that someone who was specifically nearly murdered by Durvas with his fiery demon that was actually supposed to, I think, kill Ambarish, but that didn't work. And now the tables were flipped, that now it's Durvasa Muni who is nearly murdered, And Ambarish shows him no hard feelings. And not only that, but even is willing to give his own merit, as we see the nature of those prayers that we read just now, that if his family, Ambarish felt, had done anything favorable to the Supreme Lord, or had benefited the Brahmanas, or had done anything auspicious, that may those credits, instead of going to them, go for the deliverance of Durvasa Muni. This is his prayer. So it shows a willingness to set aside any kind of hard feelings or any kind of sense of um, you know revenge or whatever. So this is an unusual thing. We don't see this very much. You do occasionally see it. And it shows that somebody has a sense, like devotees, that the world already has enough suffering and there's no need to pray for, or to take the German word is Schadenfreude, to um, revel in the distress of someone else, because that someone else had tried to profit by your distress. So that shows a high quality. All right, so I have 2 after the hour here. So shall we end here? I appreciate the good questions, and I also thank you all for offering me the opportunity to speak here. Sorry I didn't get off the ground a little earlier. I had technical difficulties. I woke up this morning to realize that there was no internet in Radha Govinda Mandir, and I had to put on my IT hat and go figure it out during Mongol Artik. And finally I got back online, and so everything got thrown off a bit. But now everything is hunky dory. So again, I appreciate your everyone's interest, and this is a very nice chapter. So all glories to the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. All glories to the devotees there in the Bhakti Center who are trying their best to give Krishna to so many people.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. Very grateful to you for taking the trouble to fix the internet. And thank you so much, Maharaj. I understand how technology can be like a nightmare sometimes. So we extremely appreciate your eagerness in offering your time and wisdom to all of us by speaking Srimad Bhagavatam regularly. Thank you so much, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Hari Hari Bo.
Maharaj ki Jai.
Jai Hare Krishna.